In this video, we will be solving system of equations involving word problems. This is the second part. I will put the link of the first part in the description box below. Well, in order that we can solve a system of equations involving word problems, we need to follow some steps. And the first step is to define the variables. So in this case right here, I will label this as step 1. The sum of two numbers is 14. Their difference is 4. Find these two numbers. So I'm going to define the variables. Okay, so in this solution that I have here, I use letter X as my first number and letter Y as the second number. Now, we can use any variable. It doesn't really matter. These are just letters that we assign to a certain number that can be solved in here. But again, these are variables, so you can use any number. Now, that's the first step. The second step is to set up the system of equation and eliminate one of the variables, then solve for the other variable. So I'm just going to label this as step 2 right here. It says that the sum of two numbers is 14. Sum means it's addition. So I'm just going to add x plus y. So the first equation would be x plus y equals 14. So again, the sum of the two numbers would be 14. Now, the other statement says that their difference is 4. So then I can go ahead and rewrite. Remember, difference is subtraction. So that would be x minus y is 4. So then from here, we already have two equations. So we're ready to eliminate one of the variables. As you can see here, both x's have the same coefficient. So then we can go ahead and subtract these two equations right away, so that we can eliminate the x. So then from here, we can go ahead and say x minus x is a 0. So we can cross that out. We have y minus negative y is 2y. And that is equal to 14 minus 4 is 10. So then we want y by itself. So we're going to divide both sides by 2. We're going to divide this by 2 here. So we can cross that out. So our y is 5. So this number 5 is actually representing the second number. Okay, so we're now ready to move on to the third step. The third step is to plug in the values solved in step 2 to any of the original equations to solve for the other variable. So I'm just gonna label this as step 3 right here. So for step 3, we can use any of these original equations. It doesn't really matter. So, but let's use the first one right here. So then I'm just going to rewrite this. That is x plus y equals 14. Now, when we plug in values, we always remember that we change the variable into a parentheses before we plug in the values. So then this would come out. We already have the y, which is 5. So x plus parentheses equals 14. So the one that we put into the parentheses is the y value, which is 5. So I put it in there. So then this would come out x plus 5 equals 14. I want x by itself, which is representing the first number because I already solved the second number right here. So I will subtract 5 from both sides, minus 5. So then we go ahead and cross the 5 out. We're left with x is equal to, that's 14 minus 5 is 9. So this is our first number. And this makes sense because if we check our work here, it says that the sum of the two numbers is 14. So if we check, it says that the sum of the two numbers is 14. So if we use the first equation, that's x plus y, is that equal to 14? Remember, again, when we plug in values, we change it into a parenthesis first before we plug in the value. So then our x that we solved was 9, and the y that we solved was 5. 9 plus 5 is 14, and that is equal to 14, which means that 9 and 5 are the two numbers that will have a sum of 14. Now, let's see if this would work for the other equation as well, which is the difference is 4. So then we go ahead and set up the equation. That's the second one right here. X minus y equals 4. What I did here was I plugged in 9 and 5 to the second equation, and we can see that 4 is equal to 4, which means that their difference is actually 4 when we subtract them. At this time, I would encourage you to pause this video and try this problem out on your own. And when you're done, unpause it and check your answer. So we go over the problem here. The sum of two numbers is 10. Twice the bigger number decreased by thrice the smaller number is 5. Find the two numbers. So we have the steps to follow in order we can solve this. The first step is to define the variables. So I'm just going to label that up here. S1 represents step 1. Okay, so I defined the variable. I used letter A for bigger number, B for smaller number. Again, you can use any letter. Others would prefer X and Y. It doesn't really matter. These are variables. You can choose or you can assign any letter to it. Now let's move on to the second step. The second step is to set up the system of equations and eliminate one of the variables, then solve for the other variable. So we use these statements that we have here to come up with an equation. So it says here that the sum of the two numbers is 10. So then I can go ahead and say A plus B is equal to 10 because sum means we add them. So A plus B is equal to 10. That's the sum of the two numbers. Now let's look at the second statement here because this is where the second equation is going to come from. Twice the bigger number decreased by thrice the smaller number is 5. So twice the bigger number can be represented as 2A because the bigger number was A, so twice of it would be 2A. And then decreased means we subtract. Decreased by thrice the smaller number. So thrice of the smaller number B, which we don't know. So we can represent this as 3B because again it says thrice. So that would be 3 times. And that is equal to 5. So I write 5 right here. So we already have a system of equations. So what are we going to do now is we have to make sure that we eliminate one of the variables so that we can solve the other variable. So in this problem that we have here, we can't, So in this problem that we have here, I gave you a trick in order that we can eliminate the first variable. The trick is to multiply the first and the second with the coefficients. So the first equation will be multiplied by 2, and then the first equation will be multiplied by 1. So pretty much whatever is the first coefficient of the second equation, you multiply it to the first. Whatever is the first coefficient of the first equation, you multiply it to the second. So pretty much you switch these two. Again, by the way, there is an invisible 1 to this because others are going to say, where did you get the 1 from? Okay, so from here, we are going to distribute. So when we distribute, we make sure that the 2 is distributed to each of the terms inside the parentheses because others distribute only to the first one and they forget that they have to distribute it to the rest of them. So it has to be to all of them. So if we distribute this, that would be 2 times A is 2A, and then 2 times B is 2B, and then we have 2 times 10 is 20. And then we do the same thing for the second equation. We distribute the 1. We distribute it to each of the terms, but pretty much multiplying 1 does not really change it. But I'm showing you the complete work so that if you have problems that it's not actually 1, then you can still do it. So 2 times 1A is 2A. And then that's 1 times negative 3B is negative 3B. And then 1 times 5 is 5. So then from here, we are going to subtract these two every time. So we're going to subtract it. So that would be 2A minus 2A is a 0. We can cross that out. So we have 2B minus 3B is a 5B. And so that is equal to 20 minus 5 is 15. We want to solve for B. So then we go ahead and divide both sides by 5. Divide this by 5. So then we can go ahead and say that our B is actually 3. So I can go ahead and write 3 right here. So this is our B value, which is representing the smaller number. So I can go ahead and label this. Now we are ready to move on to the third step. So the third step is to plug in the value that is solved from step 2 to any of the original equations to solve for the other variable. So I'm just gonna label this as step 3 right here. So then we can use any of the equations. So I'm just gonna use the first one. So I can go ahead and write that up here. That would be A plus B equals 10. We already have the B, we plug it in. Again, when we plug in values, we always change the variable into a parenthesis before we plug in the values. So that would be A plus parentheses equals 10. Again, our B was actually 3, so I put that in here, 3. So then we can come up with A plus 3 equals 10. So we subtract 3 from both sides, minus 3 and minus 3. So then we are left with our A is 7. So this 7 represents our letter A, which is defined as the bigger number. Okay, and this makes sense because if we go over the statements here, the sum of the two numbers is 10. So 7 plus 3 is 10. Twice the bigger number, so twice of 7 is 14, decreased by thrice the smaller number. Thrice of 3 is 9, so 14 decreased by 9 is 5. So these two values make sense. Did you get the same answers as this? Good. Perfect. If you find this video helpful, hit like and subscribe for more math videos. See ya!